One, and I hope you enjoy this conversation that I had with Ross Rayburn. There it is. I always like to start these by pretending that we haven't been talking for half an hour.
Hey, Julie, what's up? It's so good to see you.
Hi, Ross. Thank you for being here. It's so nice to see your face, and I'm really looking forward to this.
Me too.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So usually, the way I start is just tell us about your yoga journey, how you started, and if there's any other history to you want us to know about.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. I mean, we've known each other for a long time, and you're one of the people that I count in the fairly small category of yoga friend or yoga colleagues and close friends. So,
Oh.
it's so yeah, I was going to start with a joke, but I was going to say like, well, my yoga journey started when I met Julie Meredith. Yeah, so the I'll try to do the short version. I always say the Reader's Digest version, but I feel like that dates me now.
Yeah, it kind of does.
Yeah. So for anyone listening, Reader's Digest was what was it? Was it like it was like a
It
little
was,
magazine, right?
yeah, just a compilation of little articles.
But it was like short story, short version
Yeah.
thing. So yeah. So let's pretend like I didn't make that joke. Um, Although, as you probably will find out, or as probably you will remember, my definition of joke is not everyone else's definition of joke.
Dad jokes, your dad
Yeah,
joke.
yeah. Usually jokes mean people laugh at the end of them. Not so much with mine. So, the short version is I injured my knee in 1997. On a marathon bike ride. It was a charity ride it's called the AIDS ride. It was back when AIDS was pre cocktail, pre prep.
Yeah.
And there were all these charity rides, and this was from San Francisco to Los Angeles. And I'd raised $10,000. So I was like, I didn't want to stop. And so I pushed through the pain. I was also 26 at the time.
Yeah.
And really, I tore the meniscus in my knee, and someone said, you got to think about doing yoga to rehabilitate your knee. And I'd never even crossed my mind. I thought yoga was only for women.
Right.
I was raised in Texas, and like it was all the bad stereotypes were in my head.
Yeah.
Loved it. Like went full on 2 classes a day.
That was in Los Angeles, right? Were you in Los Angeles then?
I was in LA, and at the time in the late 90s, it was really it almost felt like the center of asana yoga, not full yoga definition. Right. I learned later it was the full definition, but in terms of what a lot of people think of as the poses, Brian Kess, Mati Ezrati, Eric Schiffman, Sean Korn, my first primary teacher, like Anthony Beninati and Sue Elkind, and it was like yoga heaven.
Yeah.
And then I started teaching probably too early, around 1999. I was a charismatic teacher, so I had popular classes, but I did not know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I should not have been teaching. But I loved it, and it's a way for me to support my acting career and not wait tables.
Right.
Which I did for 10 years. And then I actually started to injure people, and that broke my heart.
Yeah.
So then I started to focus on, well, how do you learn learn the biomechanics so you don't hurt people.
Right.
And then at the same time, I met John Friend, who had just launched Anusara Yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Loved that because it was the spirituality that I loved in church growing up, and mixed with like really smart biomechanics.
Yep.
And also joyful. Like one of the great things about the way John taught, particularly like when it was first starting, was just so much joy.
Yes.
And I just needed that in my life at that point. Did pretty well on Anasara, opened my own studio, which I went from 50 people in my class every day to 2. First thing I learned when you move a mile in Los Angeles is no one follows you. So I had to build from scratch. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think it's that where everywhere, because it's convenient. It has to be convenient. So if you move even a mile outside their, radar or whatever, their habitual day, they don't follow.
Yeah, totally. And in a way, it's a blessing because it taught me, how to teach when there's 1 or 2 people in the room.
Yep.
It's a very different, not be in your head and be like, I mean, and I don't remember who said this to me first, but teach to the people in the room.
Yeah.
Don't teach to the people who aren't there. It's such a simple teaching.
Such a simple teaching, yeah.
But that's what is in your head as a yoga teacher. Like if no one shows up, you're thinking, what did I do wrong?
Right.
What did I do wrong that they didn't come back? And it's ego, of course, but it's so human and so real. And so learning how to overcome that was cool. And then I started doing little therapeutic trainings to make money because I was making no money at the studio.
Yeah.
And realized after 3 years, the studio did well, got better. I realized, why am I killing myself at a studio, even though it was wonderful to be a part of the community,
right,
when I can just travel and teach. And so I sold the studio and went on the road. It happened to be right when Anasara was really taking off. So I I majorly benefited from John and Desiree and Amy Apoliti and Noah Maze, like other teachers that were already kind of traveling and following in John's wake. Sienna Sherman.
Yes.
And I did the same sort of thing. And
we've talked about this before, I think, but I went to your first ever out of town workshop. It was in Chicago.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've forgotten that.
And you called me sweetheart. And then you said, I have to stop doing that.
Yeah, I remember because I was raised in Texas and clearly I love where I'm from, but clearly Texas has some issues.
Yeah.
And one of them is, that kind of old boy patriarchal lexicon.
Yeah. And
I have learned so much since then about, how words actually make a difference. And even though sweetheart came from a good place.
Yes, totally.
When I was in my 20s, I didn't understand that was diminutive to people.
Yeah.
It was kind. And so like learning that kind of sensitivity, especially now when, around gender issues and it's totally. Like that was actually kind of a really good sort of progression into becoming more and more sensitive.
Yeah.
To especially now that I teach to a really large scale.
Right.
You have to be mindful.
Yeah.
Absolutely, as you should, about what you say. But that's pretty much it. The yoga journey, sort of the traveling went on for 11 years. I was hosted by some incredible people around the world. I went international a couple years in, and one of my favorite places was always to come to Brisbane.
We had so much fun.
We had so much fun, and you were always A, because we're friends, and B, just you're such an incredible host, and your community. I mean, I would say I went to a lot of great communities, but your community was just, it was like family at Sri. And so I always loved being there, and you always supported especially when I was focusing on therapeutic trainings, you were the person I always knew would support that journey. And
because I love them.
Yeah, me too. And I knew that about you. And we would geek out for, I remember how we'd be like, we can't go to dinner. We can't have a glass of wine tonight because we need to get some rest, and we know us.
Yeah, exactly. That's when the workshop's over.
Yeah, so then the journey sort of went to its stage where it is now, when Peloton, which is also in Australia, but Peloton is running a yoga platform, yoga and meditation. They called and said, hey, would you be interested in joining? And then eventually I started leading the team, and it's just, it's been life-changing, and that's kind of and that's what I'm doing now.
Well, I want to put a pin in Peloton because we'll definitely go back to that and the book. that we're going to talk about too. But I want to go back to your acting career. So this is a little known fun fact about you. Remember, I think I told you at one stage, Mallory texted me one night and goes, was Ross Rayburn ever on, what was it, Seventh Heaven? And I'm like, probably.
That's actually the show that made me stop.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I was a really, really, really bad actor.
I don't believe it.
Oh, trust me.
Okay.
And
Okay.
there's proof. Like, I shouldn't say this publicly, but you can actually find it. And whenever someone watches, they're like, oh, yeah, good decision. Good decision.
Okay.
I mean, but again, it was like, you know, the camera skills and all those things were a great lesson for what I do now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I don't know. I wasn't able to pretend, I guess. Like I was always up in my head, and I wasn't a great actor, and I could see it too. Like I worked a lot because I had a great agent, a great manager actually. And so, but I never got big parts. So I just saw in class, in acting class, you know, I can tell what good acting is. And so I wasn't doing it, especially in comparison to people that were. And that's frustrating because then you're like, no one wants to really do something if you're bad at it.
Yeah,
like,
fair enough.
I know a lot of people have to, you know, do jobs that they don't necessarily love. I think that's the things that you and I are most fortunate in life about, something that we love. But I didn't love it. I was kind of doing it to be famous.
Okay.
I was originally doing it because I loved theater, but I wasn't doing theater. I was doing, you know, small parts. And Seventh Heaven I grew up signing because my mom was the sign language interpreter in our church.
Okay.
So I had on my resume sign language.
Yeah. As
a, you know, skill set.
Right.
And they cast me, and I was very open. I was like, hey, I'm not an interpreter. Like, I know a decent amount of sign. And they had Seventh Heaven had a deaf character. So they had a very solid deaf audience.
Yes. And
so I get there and I'm playing the role of an interpreter. And not only was that beyond my skill set, but I also had to be signing. Like, I would say my line. They wouldn't let me sign it before I said it, because the deaf community would notice that's not what you do.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I'd have to be finishing my sign after I was speaking. Or actually, what was harder was I'd have to finish the sign of someone else while I started speaking something else.
Oh, geez.
And I couldn't do it. So, like, you know, there's 50 people on set, and it was an Aaron Spelling show it was single camera.
Yeah.
So you're doing the shot over and over again from different vantage points. And I turned a 2-hour scene into like a 7-hour day.
Oh, ouch.
And I went home and I was like, I told my manager, I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. And I was already teaching yoga.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know what? It's time to take the plunge and do this full time.
Yeah. Wow.
I love teaching yoga.
I never heard that story. Unreal.
I was saving it until we did a podcast.
Thank you. Oh, so all right. So not everybody knows about your husband. Not everybody in my audience anyway. So how did you first meet Chris?
Well, Chris is I mean, he's one of the most kind, yogic. He does yoga now, but he didn't do yoga before he met me. And like he's displayed in his career. I say, like, you do more yoga than I've ever done.
Yeah.
His ability to be steady in the storm is magnificent.
Yeah.
And he's a very talented, very kind of cutting edge in a way, director, choreographer. He was a ballet dancer until he was 26, and started choreographing ballet, did I consider him like one of the reasons why story ballets like Swan Lake, Nutcracker, those are narrative ballets as opposed to abstract ballets. And they really fell out of fashion for a long period of time. Like, don't quote me on this, but like a decade or more.
Yeah.
with Alice in Wonderland in 2011 at the Royal Ballet, he kind of brought them back in a way. And now he's done multiple, and other ballet choreographers as well. And again, forgive me if I'm getting that wrong, because I know people probably did it in that time, but I like to I center him in the universe.
Yes, absolutely, as you should.
And then he did his first musical, American in Paris, and because they wanted a director that was also the choreographer, and that did really well. And then he just did then he kind of went in a totally different direction. Yeah.
Did he win? Which one did he win a Tony for?
I'm doing a little for listeners, what do you call that little cutesy smirk?
Yes.
He won for both, actually.
Did he?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Like we and again, we'll get to Peloton, but at the beginning of class, we say, I have 2 blocks and a blanket. If you don't have blocks, you can use books.
Yeah.
So I want to do a video that said, that like a TikTok that says, and if you don't have blocks, you can use 2 Tonys. Is they're the perfect height. And he won choreography for American in Paris, and then he just did it's been a couple of years now, the Michael Jackson musical, MJ the Musical.
Yeah.
And that was a very different journey for a number of reasons.
Yes.
But I was so proud of the way he and Lynn Nottage and the whole team. Lynn Nottage is the writer. They really, found a way to tell an extremely complex story.
Yeah.
With balance and kind of a mythological perspective, like asking profound questions, but also making entertainment.
Yeah, I think for my Australian listeners, because it's not come over there yet. MJ the Musical is a story of Michael Jackson. Just
right. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. And so and now he does a little bit of both. He's MJ's have multiple companies now, so he's in Munich right now with the ballet company. So now he's doing both. And so what did you ask me originally? Oh, we met in a bar.
Where? Here or in the UK?
Fire Island, which is it's like an island just outside of New York City where everyone goes in the summer.
Yeah. So a bar at Fire Island, and the rest is history.
Yeah, literally, I walked over to say hi to a friend of mine that he was talking to and that he knew, and Carlos walked off, and it took about 30 seconds before we had a bing moment. Yeah. And and we've been together ever since. So it's been 12 years, but we had our 10-year anniversary a couple weeks ago. Our wedding anniversary.
Gosh, has it been 10 years?
Isn't that wild?
That's wild. That is really wild. All right. So you've married Chris, you've been traveling, and then I remember it as just getting a cryptic message from you on Instagram. Can we set up a time to talk on Zoom? I'm like, sure. Just figuring you were headed to Australia and you wanted to come out and, have a visit. But that wasn't it. So how did that all come about?
Yeah, well, so just again to kind of contextualize. So I went on the road in 2007, and 11 years later, so almost 12 essentially, like 2018, I got a call from Kristen McGee, happened to be home, and who answers their phone?
Right.
Happened to answer my phone. And Kristen was the first teacher hired for Peloton, which was originally a cycling company that taught boutique classes online, and they expanded to the point to where they had started a tread and a strength program, and they were starting a yoga and meditation program. She was the first teacher that was hired in the summer of 2018, and I was the 4th teacher they hired, first guy, male teacher. And she said, "Hey, I know you've been on the road and I know you're doing really well, but would you ever consider..." Oh, she actually had to be cryptic at first. She had to say, I have an opportunity that I can't really tell you about, but would you consider coming in for an interview? And actually, she had eventually said, we weren't sure if you wanted to come off the road.
Yeah.
And I was honestly it had been 11 years. And even though like I had the best life because I had friends like you all over the world. And I got to be a part of like tons of incredible communities,
Yeah.
very different, but all similar hearts. And
Mm.
Getting on an airplane, I mean, I traveled 3.3 million miles in 11 years.
Wow.
I calculated it just to know,
Yeah.
and estimated, obviously. And so that part of it, you know, I don't know if well, the listeners can't see, but there's a little pup in the corner.
Yes, I saw it. And
Now I have
another one walking
two,
around.
but
Yeah.
I love dogs, as you know,
Yes.
because I felt like I'm sure everybody felt this with your dog, but like I always felt like we had a very special relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
She
You
was she,
did. You
she was
did.
she was such a love, and so like I knew that I couldn't wait to have a dog, and it was those type of things that by going off the road I could finally do again, and you know, have a more traditional, you know, go to dinner with my friend, go to a birthday party on a Saturday night.
Right.
And so it's like I like everything in life, there are always things that are, you know, benefits of your choices and their
Yep.
downsides choices. And
Trade-offs. Yeah.
the benefit now is I get to stay home, and I do love my job still. The downside is I don't miss the travel, but I miss all my friends.
Yeah. 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 So the deal with Peloton is you're in New York, like you're there and not going anywhere. And
Yeah, I mean, it's really great in the sense that it's kind of you know, it's the first time I'd gotten a paycheck in 20 years,
right.
as opposed to, you know, basically going contract work essentially.
Right. Essentially, yeah.
First time health insurance in my life, which is,
Wow.
and also first time working on a team really. And
Yeah.
that's not true. I guess yoga studio was, but first time being a part of a company.
Yeah.
And especially because I have an administrative position as well with Peloton. And so, um, sorry, it's just buzzing and I forgot to turn off my phone.
Right.
I, you know, I'm getting to work skills, you know, getting along with other people's skills.
Yeah. Yeah.
Corporate skills that I didn't ever have or know, you know, oh, this is what people do.
Yeah.
And
What was it? What was that transition like for you, though? Just you know, from being a solo business owner, entrepreneur, contractor, basically, to having to, you know, well, number one, being home all the time, and then number two, you know, working that way.
honestly, I mean, it was great. I, I don't know how I got this blessing, but there's, you know, someone when I was like 13, um, I remember I remember who it was actually, and I'm not going to say their name, but like someone called me a dilettante. And I was like, I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah.
But you know, it's someone who basically doesn't know how to stick with one thing.
Oh.
And of course I was insulted, but I realized like there's actually some truth in that. Like I have a kind of childlike quality of, you know, I don't know if I would have ever been diagnosed as ADD, like if that would have been more of a thing, but
Yeah.
I definitely like have a bit of a, let's call it, well, I'll put it in yoga terms. I've got a bit of vata with my pitta.
Yeah.
You know, go with the wind. And the good side to that is I usually kind of dive into what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if things change, I've been very blessed with what I think of as a blessing is kind of not looking back and just being like, okay, this is my thing now.
Yeah.
And how do I make it great?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it actually wasn't that hard. The only thing again that was hard was like it was just missing the people.
Yeah.
That I saw for 11 years, like you're especially places that I went back pretty much every year.
Yeah.
You know, that was tough.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So you wrote a book.
I did. Do you want, because I feel like I'm talking so much. Do you want to tell them my travails? Because I actually wrote my first product because of you. the therapy manual.
That's because of me?
Yeah.
Did I
You
ask
don't
you?
remember this?
I don't.
Okay,
So
then
please
I'll tell
tell
the
the
story.
story.
Yeah, so because again, you really supported my journey into focusing on, well, I'll just give the full context.
Okay.
So I love therapy. I love yoga therapeutics. I loved helping
Yeah.
people with injuries. I also injured myself a lot. So, and I don't know. I always wonder when you get your chart read if it's self-fulfilling prophecy or if it was actually prophecy. But I was told one time when I got a reading, like, I don't know, when I was 19, and maybe a lot of people were told this, but I was told that one of my things in my chart was a wounded warrior.
Mm,
And that you will manifest a lot from your wounds.
okay.
And I was like, I'll be damned. And it turned out to be true. Like, I constantly injured myself, and my yoga practice and kind of a lot of my perspective on life
Mm,
from those moments, physical and more profound,
yeah.
of being wounded and being injured. And so that was really when Anusara Yoga, which went through a kind of implosion
Yes.
in 2011, right?
Well,
2012.
yeah.
Thank you. See, moved on.
Yeah.
um, and that actually took a long time to move on. We both went through
Yes.
a lot of
Yeah.
really difficult moments because of that. Again, I think massive catalytic growth because
Definitely.
of it. I mean, I don't want to speak for
Definitely.
you, but
No, totally. And one of the things that I've been talking about a lot lately is just the with somebody like you, I can reflect on the education we got, back then. I mean, there was the joy and there was the intelligence of the technique and everything, but it was also, we would have some amazing teachers just like rock up, completely, and we're like, oh, this is so cool, and then with hindsight we can look back and say, holy shit, like we had an unbelievable education. And that's kind of what led me to want to bring people like you to Brisbane when I moved there, to try and replicate that for people.
yeah, and that's what I really questioned when it sort of imploded. I questioned everything.
Yeah.
Like, do I really believe what I'm saying?
Mm,
Like, even Om Namah Shivaya, which was one of our main mantras. Like, I was
mm,
like, do I believe that? Do I
yeah.
really believe that at the core of my being is beauty and bliss and
Mm,
power?
yeah.
Um, and so my safety was, I did believe that when I clawed the floor in downward dog, my wrist didn't hurt.
Mm,
I did believe that when I like squeezed my shins, my trikonasana was deeper.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that was empirical.
Right.
If I didn't do it, couldn't touch my toes. If I did do it, could touch my toes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so I was like, okay, I'll tell you what. I stopped teaching teacher trainings
Hmm.
because I was like, I don't feel right taking money from people if I don't know that I believe it.
Yeah.
But I started only teaching therapeutic trainings.
Hmm.
And that then became my thing. So
Yeah.
I pretty much in the last 5 years only taught therapeutic trainings. And
Right.
because there's a lot of people that wanted to learn, as a yoga teacher, for those of you who never met a yoga teacher, one of the things that's I think most disempowering, at least it was for me, was when someone would say, this hurts, and you don't know what to
You
say.
don't know what to do. Yeah.
And that's like, because the default is, well, my knee hurts in pigeon. Well, do figure 4 pigeon on your back.
Yeah. Don't do pigeon.
Don't do pigeon.
Yeah.
And that's the smart thing to say when you don't know,
Yes.
but it doesn't make you feel good as a teacher.
Right.
And so I'm like, why don't I help teachers like I help myself
Mm,
learn what to say in those
yeah.
moments? And then that turned into some really beautiful, like working with PTSD, people, like veterans with PTSD, working with, like even, one of my favorite stories ever was like a woman that was getting ready to pass. And, she was in her 70s and she had dealt with a number of cancers, and her son was a student of mine. And he had me go into her hospital room, and
Mm,
we didn't do any asana, but
yeah.
we did like, some like hand movements. Like I put my hand under hers, and I was like, just press, can you, just push down
Yeah.
and breathe. And it was so simple, but it was like life-changing because it taught me so many things about, well, that moment.
Yeah.
We do Shavasana every class, almost every class, and it's corpse pose. And, there's something extremely profound about practicing, not just resting, but actually practicing dying.
Yeah.
Tuesdays with
really
Maury.
letting go. Yeah.
You've read Tuesdays with Maury, I bet.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a book about that moment. So therapeutics became my focus. And I never wanted to write it down. I never wanted to write down my techniques because I knew there was so much nuance and potential misunderstanding.
Mm.
And I was so concerned, especially because it's autodidactic. I never, didn't go to medical school.
Right.
But I was teaching, I had doctors often take my class, and, I always felt like I could go toe to toe, at least in my sort of biomechanical sphere,
right,
with doctors. And they would say that to me, like, wow, you really like learned your stuff. But writing it down, writing a manual was a whole other level, and scary for me.
Mm.
And you convinced me to do it. You're like, get over yourself and just, just do it. And so, so that's what made me write a therapeutics manual. And I pretty much had just finished the final version when I got the Peloton job.
That's why I don't have a copy.
I know. I have it. I'll send it to you.
Yes, please.
I can't believe I never did that, especially since you're the reason.
honest to God, I did not know that. So
anyway, back to your original question. My friend Hunter calls me Ross Land, the effing plane Rayburn. So as your listeners have already learned, like that's a great moniker for me. Your original question, did I write a book? So Therapeutics Manual was kind of my first, but this was the first time this time I will be the first time that I will be published. It comes out January 9th of 2024. But it is done. So it actually it is in its final form.
Excellent. So this is not a book about therapeutics. This is a book about meditation.
There's a little bit in there about therapeutics, because I do kind of recount my journey in terms of interoception, your ability to perceive your own feeling, your ability to perceive like what hurts.
Yeah.
And also more subtly what feels good, because we don't really notice our body that much when it feels good.
Yeah.
And so your ability to feel physically is interoception. And I mention that because there is a meditative, the book is called Turning Inward. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to write a book that wasn't about meditation, because I feel like meditation is a block for a lot of people. It was for me.
Yes,
I hated
me too.
meditation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was originally called something else, and it was originally called Thinning the Veil.
Okay.
About a thinner line between all the separations of life.
Yeah.
Inner separations and outer separations. But the word, the veil, has some negative context, like, if it's used to cover something that someone that doesn't be covered. And so my publisher was like, it's a little too poetic and doesn't make sense. How about turning inward? And I'm like, you know what? That's such a better. It took me a while because I had to let go of my own.
Yes.
This is what I wanted.
Yeah.
But she was so right, because it did what I believed in, which was widen the scope and open the doorway, open the gateway for more people to do what I believe, which is turn inward to all that is inside. And that's how that title came about. Yeah. And there is a little bit of a reference to therapeutics, but it is mostly about, saying to people, look, you're probably already meditating. You don't call it that. And you can turn almost anything into meditation.
Can we back up for 1 second?
Yeah, you bet.
And talk to me about how meditation was a block for you, because I just told this story on my retreat that I did over the weekend, how it was a block for me, but I'm really curious to hear how meditation was frustrating or whatever it was.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I bet it's probably the same reason, because you and I are so similar.
Yeah,
it's why we I mean, normally our conversations are not me just talking, but you're being very gracious as a host.
You know what? I this is the way I look at this. They want to hear about you, and so I'm just like directing the flow. This is how I do it with everybody. So don't
No,
feel.
I know, and I've done a few podcasts before, so I know that that's how it goes. But there is a part of me that I don't know. I believe in. I like playing tennis, and so
Yeah.
there's a part of
Okay.
me that knows that that's how this goes, and so I deal with it. But I also love people, especially love people that I love to talk to, like you.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so it's my instinct is like, tell me what you think.
Well, I just hit the ball to you, so take it.
Yeah, so oh, see, now the first time I get way off onto a tangent.
How meditation was a block for you?
Thank you. Um, so yeah, I think it was maybe the same reason for you because we are so similar. I hated it because I couldn't do it.
Exactly how I felt.
Yeah, I was like bad at it. I was like, oh, I thought you could be bad at it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And I mean, I didn't like sitting still. My perception was what a lot of people think, which is you're only successful if you stop your thoughts.
Exactly. I have
And
to say, we were not meditation as well trained as we were in Anasara. Meditation was not part of that. It started a little bit when Paula Muller-Ortega started to come around, but it was yeah, I felt like that was one big kind of
yeah,
blind
did
spot
you
in
ever
our
have
training.
Sally Kempton come to Australia?
No, I did get to be with her once in the States, but not no, I never had her in Australia.
Yeah, she was really the game changer. I mean, I did study with Paul a little bit,
Yeah,
and with a few other teachers. Douglas Brooks
yeah,
was a little bit more philosophy, more
yeah.
like philosophy and religious study than and also like Indian mythology and history.
Hmm.
But Sally was really the game changer for me.
Yeah,
She was the first one that basically, showed me because it wasn't told at first because it was mostly I didn't really get to know her personally for a while. But basically, dispelled those myths
yeah,
that you don't have to stop your thoughts. you can you can stretch in the middle of,
yeah.
like it's okay.
You could stop and write things down.
You can stop and write things down if you don't want to finish the meditation. Like,
Yeah,
you know, like spirit will be okay. Like doesn't mean you like lose your invitation.
yeah.
Um and that was really all the difference. She also gave me some really cool techniques like she said try this, start shower before you meditate. And I was like,
Okay.
okay. And she said, yeah, there's something very traditional about a cleansing
Yeah,
that is related to the liminal, the sacred,
yeah.
and also it sort of like puts you in a new frame of mind, and it might make a difference. It made all the difference for me.
Wow, that's
I
amazing.
almost like feel like that's changed my practice, changed my relationship to meditation and turning
Yeah,
inward than anything else.
unreal. For me, it was Lauren Roche.
Mm,
So yeah, so he came, and I'd been teaching over 10 years by that point. And I felt like a failure because I was a yoga teacher, an experienced yoga teacher who couldn't meditate. And I mean, I didn't dare tell anybody, but he got in touch. I had gotten in touch with him when the Radiant Sutras first came out because I couldn't get it in Australia. And he actually sent me a book himself. And a couple years later, he wanted to come to Australia to teach. So he reached out and I'm like, yeah, sure. So he came, and it was right at the end of, I think he did the first revision. And
mm,
I got an email from Camille, his wife, and she said something like, I don't know what kind of state he's going to be in when he gets there. So you might want to just make sure like you have a sign and I'm just thinking, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? So he came, and he was fine, obviously, but he had just come off like getting up at 4 a.m. for, 3 months in a row chanting the Sanskrit or something. So he was great. So he did get there and sleep for almost 2 solid days, like when he got there. But on the way home from the airport, he said, well, tell me about your meditation practice. And I thought, well, I have nothing to lose. Like, this guy's the expert. So I just said, I hate meditation. And he said, why? And I told him, I feel I can't still my mind. I don't like all the things you just said. I don't like sitting still, blah, blah, blah. So he goes, well, the first thing he said was, well, of course, you're a woman. And I was like, I just thought, well, I'm listening, okay. And so he said something like, women need to move. And he said, if all the women sat still, then all of humanity would die. But he did actually go from there. So he was supposed to, do some stuff at the studio and then, stay for a week and then go on his way. But he ended up staying, unbeknownst to me, ahead of time for a month with us, and kind of went to different places